here. Yep, get a readout there. Cooperative Legacy Project interview number 81, September 26, 2007. We're visiting with Maynard Whitmyre, former field representative and vice president of the South Dakota Farmers Union. Maynard, where and when were you born?
September 10, 1932.
And
that was about the only crop the folks had that year. That was in the dirty 30s.
Mm-hmm. When did your family originally settle in South Dakota? They were
about 1888 or something is when Grandpa Whitmyre came from Norway,
mm-hmm.
from Hamar, Norway.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that was about it. We live 2 miles from the Whitmyre farm. We do own it, but nobody lives there. It's another vacant farmstead.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was one of 8 boys and 1 girl. Oh, maybe back up. Elling Whitmyre, my grandfather, was a family of 8. He had 7 sisters, or 6 sisters, and only Elling, who was the only boy, and 1 sister came. And she ended up in North Dakota, buried up there, north of Fargo. And so most of my Whitmyre relatives are in Norway.
Oh, okay.
And they have visited here, including company for my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
As you were told not to mention it before.
Oh, okay.
That was a surprise.
Oh, all right. You had brothers and sisters?
1 sister. One brother was killed when he was 6.
Mm-hmm.
But 1 sister, Lois, who lives in Boston, Wisconsin. Her husband is a retired Lutheran minister and chaplain at several nursing homes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was your dad's name?
John.
Okay.
John E. for Elling, then Grandpa Whitmyre.
All right. You want to talk about him a little bit? What sort of a guy was he?
My dad was born in 1900, passed away in 72. Kind of was active in the Farmers Union, Butler local,
mm-hmm.
and was president, I remember, at one time. Active in the Butler Lutheran Church, Ebenezer Church, which eventually moved into Butler.
Mm-hmm.
The Ebenezer, which was a Norwegian Lutheran, merged with Faith Lutheran in Butler, which was a German Lutheran church. And in 1939, they had the dedication of, because they put the 2 buildings together, the dedication on December 7 of 41.
Did they all get along well? So
Yeah.
the ethnic groups didn't necessarily
Yeah,
do that.
no, I mentioned that to Bishop Andrea, who was a bishop, and she was surprised. She said, back up in Jamestown, when the Norwegian Lutheran quit, there's no way they would go to the German Lutheran. They had to find a Norwegian Lutheran.
Mm-hmm.
She said when she was growing up by Jamestown, well, you remember her saying that when she grew up, she thought everybody was Norwegian Lutheran Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And belonged to the Farmers Union.
Yes, yes. What about your mother? What was her name?
Mabel Hansen. And she grew up about 3 miles from home. They went to the same church, I suppose, so they just met automatically without thinking about anything. Dad farmed 1 quarter and then rented another one. I remember we put up hay, with the old hay stacker, and we put it up on some of the neighbors' land. You put up 2 stacks, you get 1.
Mm-hmm.
Dad was a hard worker. Steady. If manure had to be hauled on Sunday, we did it, but usually Sunday was a day off.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him harnessing horses, and he proud of his horses. They were Perchins, and
A lot of people didn't have those kind of big horses, did they?
Yeah, the dad's horses were big, I remember. And then he had a Shire once, but they were big horses. He'd have 5 horse, he hitched 2 and 3, and then 3 and 3, and then 4 for on the grain binder. When we got the tractor H Farmwall in 46, so then we put a tractor hitch in front of the binder the first year. And I remember they thrashed, everybody had horses and teams, and I was short, so I hauled grain, me and Hugh Parks. So I always thought that was a little unfair. We were the last ones to get done because we had to unload the load after everybody was done. We do remember using pickups to haul grain. At first, it was trailer and tractor.
To town,
I don't think anybody hauled. I don't remember taking grain to town. They put it in the granary, and most of it was. Farms are pretty self-sustaining. They grew their own energy. You talk about all converting corn to ethanol now. Farmers grew their own energy back then because the hay and the oats went through the horsepower. Mom had chickens, Dad had pigs, and then milk cows. They were mostly kind of milking shorthorn. And a couple of Guernseys, never did have Holsteins. We were a mile and a half from school, which we walked every day.
Okay, that was a country school?
Country school, went all 8. I had 4 teachers in those 8 years.
What was the name of the school?
Fairview, District 116. And probably one event I remember in about 44, an Army military plane, twin engine, flew going north real low. And just when we got out of school, and after a bit we saw black smoke over north. We started going up there, and teacher came by, and the plane had crashed. It had only 2 people in it, and the pilot was killed. The co-pilot was pulled out by a couple neighbors. But I can still see that blackened body of the pilot sitting in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Got my first pair of glasses in the 7th grade and broke them about the last day of school and didn't wear glasses until I worked for Farmers Union.
Did you need glasses before?
I just thought I did, I guess, because I couldn't have had them over 3-4 months.
Oh, okay. Did you notice a change when you got glasses again?
Well, yeah. Then I needed my. I don't remember if my arms were too short and I had to get glasses or whatever.
Oh.
But at first I got those half glasses. That's those of us who didn't want to admit we needed glasses.
Okay.
I guess school. I remember this was I grew up on the home Whitmyre farm, and my 2 uncles, Dad's 2 youngest brothers, walked to Butler 5 miles away every day to get their high school education. And I think they kept track of how many miles they walked to get their high school diploma. And they ended up, then went to Augustana after high school and became school superintendents.
Oh, okay.
I said Dad was one of 8 boys and 1 sister. Dad farmed. One other brother farmed.
Yeah, farming quite a bit different than.
Yes, I'll say. Yep. And they farmed together somewhat. Sometimes we combined for him and made hay together.
Do you remember much about the 30s, or they say people don't remember much really before they're 9 years old?
I remember burning thistles in the fence line. And I think we were all the same boat. There was no electricity, no phone bills, no water bills. We ate. If a chicken quit laying eggs, she made the next dinner.
Okay.
We butchered our own pigs. Butchered cattle. Usually neighbors got together and helped with it.
People spend a lot more time visiting with their neighbors.
I think they did. We thrashed, and one highlight of the thrashing was when the run ended, and then you met at the owner of the thrash machine, met at his house, and they settled up who owed what and who got what.
That was one local guy that had the thrashing machine?
Yeah. Francis Coyne had the... he belonged to Farmers Union at one time. Just about everybody in the neighborhood belonged to Farmers Union at one time or other. I suppose dues were $3, $4, $5 a year then. But they, and then a couple of the members helped start the Farmers Union Oil Co-op in Bristol. I don't remember what year that was, but that would have been early 50s, I'm guessing.
Okay.
And I think Dad was always co-op. I remember he was a delegate to the GTA convention. And Dolores and I were, at one time, remember hearing Hubert Humphrey. You'd sit and listen to him for an hour and didn't seem like it at all.
He spoke quite frequently at GTA conventions.
And August Domy, Emil Lorix, and when you get into GTA co-ops, Dwayne Mortensen, the Senex, good Farmers Union supporters.
When you were young, what did you want to farm? Was that what you, or did you have other aspirations?
No, I guess I always liked photography. The first camera I got by selling 10 packets of Gurney seeds. And I just
what kind of a camera was that?
It was a little 127 box camera. And then when I was in high school, then it was trapped muskrats, and I got enough money and bought a 35 millimeter, about 1949 or 50. And because I had a good camera, I did a couple weddings back then. And that's 57 years. I did one last year. But it was a Claris focal plane shutter. I think I still have it. Doesn't work, but I still have it.
Yeah. Did you have one of the ones that you had to have a hood over your...
I got one of those up in the attic.
Do you?
That was an 8x10. In 57 or 8, I bought a studio in Webster, so we spent 2 days a week there, and that had that old Century Kodak. And you had a hood over, and you had a bulb to squeeze the shutter, and it did have electronic flash, but which wasn't all that dependable originally.
Now, what kind of negatives did that have in it?
Well, it had a 8x10 or a split back, so you got 2 5x7s. You know, you wouldn't get 2 5x7, but it was maybe 4x5. Could have been 4x5s.
Okay.
And then got a Ryko camera 120. Well, the first camera for taking weddings was a 4x5 speed graphic. And that had, you got 2 shots out of a holder and change a bulb every time.
Quite frequently used by newspaper people.
Yeah, you see some old movies today, you see their guy with a 4x5 speed graphic.
No.
No.
Go ahead.
I guess from the speed graphic, then I got that Mamiya RB67 had used 120 film, and I must have done well over 100 weddings with that. Got it the week before our daughter got married, Patty. Pictures all turned out.
You have a note there.
Oh, yeah, in Webster at the studio, there were glass negatives that were used before.
Yeah.
Came from that
was
camera.
The original kind of thing. So it did use glass negatives before.
Yeah, but it was film.
Okay, so they had shifted over.
But you talk about things you should have kept, threw them in a rock pile someplace.
Oh.
Glass negatives.
Yeah, were they kind of like early photographs then?
Yeah. No,
so a lot of those end up in museums these days.
Yes, but I looked there and haven't been able to find any. I don't know. I suppose they had burned their junk pile at one time and they melted. Yep. But they had 5x7 glass negatives. That was quite a camera. And,
Okay.
A lot of things that I had are in museum pieces now.
Okay. Well, we've kind of bounced around a little bit. We talked about the 30s. You remember Pearl Harbor, hearing about that? Or is that a little too early?
No, it was 41. I would have been 9.
Yeah.
I suppose we heard it on the radio.
Yeah.
I can't say I remember the day. I remember when Roosevelt died.
Sure.
It isn't like when President Kennedy was shot. Everybody knows where they were when that happened.
Yeah.
I was picking eggs. Oh, yeah, Grandma Whitmyre. Yeah, we came home from church after the dedication of our church. We came home, and Grandma stayed at our place, and she hollered through the window that I'd forgotten that, but we'd come home from church from that dedication, and she told us, hollered through the window, that Japan attacked Pearl Harbor.
Okay. What were the war years like on the farm?
I remember the ration books. You had to have a coupon to buy gas, to buy tires. You had to report your acres.
Prices got better than they had.
Prices got better. Farmers were the very few winners in a war. Prices got better, and I suppose you could say grain prices are too bad now.
Yeah. Not enough or nothing much that you could spend that extra money on, right? Okay. We're looking at a war ration book here, so to kind of you can actually say something, Dolores, if you want to. You don't have to.
Well, I just knew where these were.
Oh, okay.
Got my name on them.
I suppose you got them because of teaching, or no, you weren't teaching then.
See, there's Arnold's.
Okay.
Each one of us got our own book, apparently.
Well, yeah.
There's Mom's.
So you could get more gas.
No, I've got the ones from ours, and my sister was only 3 or 4 years old, had her own book.
Yeah.
So everybody was allotted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this would have been before my other sister was born.
Why is it that there's so many stamps in there yet?
It must have been for something.
Didn't you use them?
Must have been for something that wasn't all that.
Oh, maybe there wasn't enough of it, and you couldn't get it.
I remember sugar was one thing too.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because I dropped a bag of sugar once.
All right.
Ruined a couple of coupons.
No, but it doesn't say on there what they're for, does it?
I think people were pretty patriotic at that time. They sold war bonds. I remember at school we would save our pennies and buy stamps.
Yeah, we did too.
Yep.
I don't think you could sell very many stamps today for the war. We probably don't put that in there.
No, things changed.
I remember Dad always listening to the radio, you know, and this attacks and that attack. And,
Yeah.
when the atomic bomb was dropped.
Oh, yeah.
This
I
is
don't know.
Battle of Normandy and
cost
Iwo
of
Jima.
fillings in 1958
Oh, yeah.
from the dentist.
Okay, well, that's... yeah.
$4, $1.50, $3.
Yeah.
Oh, when I was
Didn't need insurance for that.
when I was in high school, a kid, we were walking after the game, and it was in the wintertime, and
Yep.
a kid tripped me, and I fell down, and I was supposed to hit on chunk of ice. Anyway, they had that 3 stitches put in. The whole bill was $5. Stitches put in and taken out, $5, and it was at night.
Yep. Yep.
$5.
High school, you didn't... Country schools, you only went through the grades, right?
Yeah,
And you
high school, went to
Webster?
Webster, stayed in town until spring, the first 2 years, and then rode
Just
back
bad
and
roads
forth
out here then? in
yeah,
those days?
and then rode with the neighbor then.
A lot of snow?
A lot of snow then.
Winters.
This would have been in the late 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we'd get... Oh, one time we, in the grade school, there was a snowstorm came up. We went home with the teacher. We stayed there, my sister and 2 neighbors. And we stayed there 3 or 4 days. No phone, you know, the folks had no way of knowing where we were.
Mm.
And until, I don't remember how it all ended up, you know, if Nelson or Hanson's took us home or what. But anyway, we played rook.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they were snowbound for 3 days.
Yeah.
So that had, you know, looking back, that had to be kind of traumatic for the folks.
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't go and look for anybody, you know, it was storming.
Yeah.
We don't have 3-day blizzards, anything like that.
There were a lot of those, I guess, in the late 40s. There were 3, I think, at least in where I grew up at, there were 3 pretty heavy winters.
And you didn't have all the snow removal equipment then.
Did you have a gravel road here, or was it just...
No, it was a gravel road.
Okay. Built up?
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
So a lot of them were just dirt roads in those days.
I remember one winter they left the pickup up a mile from home and then took the horses up there and
Yeah.
tied the horses to the hay rack and went to town, took the cream and eggs in.
Let's see here. I'm kind of bouncing around on my questions a little bit. Let's go back a little bit. We talked about Farmers Union. Was the education program active up here? Did you take part in that?
I don't think we did. Leonard Denholm was the field man for Farmers Union, I remember, and he talked about camps, but I don't recall anybody ever going. I never did.
Okay.
But I remember he would come to our Butler local in our schoolhouse,
Mm-hmm.
and by gas lantern light. I guess I don't remember what prices they talked about. I imagine low prices for livestock, and so I don't know just what the campaigns were.
Yeah.
But there were usually quite a few people came.
Mm-hmm.
This is my Aladdin lamp.
Oh, okay.
I guess if they got too hot, those things burned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My memory of those is during times when we lost electricity.
And we didn't have electricity. That's when we used this.
Yeah, yeah.
We did that a year ago last November. Didn't have electricity for 4 or 5 days. And the house was kind of cool. And then I went to Roslyn, got some kerosene for the kerosene, you know, then hooked up a tractor light to a battery, so that worked pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that was recent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're kind of out of practice on having to get along that way.
Yeah, yeah.
you graduated from high school in
1950.
1950. Did you go to college?
Went 1 year to Brookings.
Brookings, okay. How was that? What was it like? What, you started in the fall
of 50,
50,
51. It was ag course, or mostly agriculture. We did judging, and I was on the livestock judging team, and I won the beef judging up at Crookston.
Did you?
There were about 5 other ag.
Mm-hmm. How many students were there then in those days?
Well, this wasn't the regular college. It was the ag course, and there were about 70 or so that took it.
Okay. Well, you were down next to the campus, though, in Brookings.
Yeah, we stayed at Eastman's dorm.
Yeah. So how many kids were there at Brookings at that time then?
I suppose 2,000-3,000 altogether.
Okay.
3 probably kind of sticks in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But we judged with other eggs. It was like a VOAG, like our tech high. So it was a VOAG course.
Mm-hmm.
And
was it a 4-year program or a
2-year?
2-year program.
2-year.
Okay.
And then
most of the people going through it were going to go back and farm.
Yeah. Well, Dolores's brother went 2 years. He graduated. I just went 1 year. Had to stay home and help farm, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I was elected president of the class for the next year.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Now what kind of living arrangements did you have down there?
Just like regular college students. We stayed in Eastman dorm and ate at the school cafeteria. And yeah, we had rooms right next with regular college students.
Was that the first time you'd been away from home?
I guess so. Yeah. And I don't remember it being. Well, no, because when I went to high school, I stayed in Webster for a week at a time.
Yeah, sure.
So,
that's right.
So I wasn't old, but I was always glad when Friday came.
Did you have a car down there?
No, I rode with a guy who married my cousin eventually.
Oh, okay.
And Leonard Nessig, but Lloyd Dury married Marcella. He's gone now. Marcella isn't. But rode, I think it was $2 a trip to ride to Brookings and then $2 to ride back.
Mm-hmm.
I got $5 a week, and most of it went for that. And we could go to a show for about 50 cents.
Mm-hmm.
That was egg money.
Yeah. So in 1951, you moved back.
Farm. Yep. And on the farm until we were married in 58.
58. Okay, that was my next question.
Oh, okay.
So you advanced to the right spot.
And let's see, in 54, we rented this place. Mm-hmm. The owner was killed, tractor tipped over on him, just southeast here, half a mile.
Yeah.
And rented it for 2 years, and in 56 I bought it. Paid $30 an acre. Mm-hmm. It had to be 10% down. And I didn't have it. And Otto Grushnick, the Lutheran Brotherhood insurance agent, said, "I'll borrow it to you." So I borrowed $960 from the insurance agent.
Mm-hmm.
He got paid back
with
$30 an acre in 56.
It had been really a slow climb from the Depression on land prices.
Yeah, that stayed that way, and then I don't remember what year I bought an 80 up here, and 80 belonged to Grandpa. That was $80 then. That would have been, what, in 60-something. But, and then we bought Uncle Rudy's. That was $50,000 for 240 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And then when did Bob buy up here? Is that 10 years ago? Paid $100,000 for a quarter.
9 or 10 years ago.
Yep.
And the pastor was telling about by Stratford, a quarter of land. One family owned all but this one quarter. And the guy was getting older, but anyway, it came up for auction. He paid $3,600 an acre. Mm-hmm. He wanted that quarter. I suppose it was an eyesore to him for 40 years while he farmed. $3,600. over $500,000.
Yep. During the 1950s, there was a military draft yet. Did you
I
get close to
I
that?
registered, and 4 of us in the area were called up, and I went.
What year would that have been? During the Korean War or later?
I suppose it was probably early 53, 4, 5, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I went for induction, and then because of my neck, he wondered how I got that far. And anyway, he wrote in there that would not work with the equipment. So I was sent home. That was kind of a humbling thing to do. I'd gotten gifts, and shave kit and all that. And
Sure.
didn't know what to do with it. I guess I didn't turn them back. They didn't want them back. It was kind of a humbling thing, He went away, bye, Maynard, good luck, and God be with you and all that. And anyway, the other 3 that went when I did, they all came back hale and hearty. Probably learned to smoke in the process. I don't know, but I never did.
You didn't.
I got caught smoking when I was going to confirmation, and haven't dared try since.
Okay, well, you're ahead of the game. Kids. I got kind of getting through some of the family questions here. How many kids do you have?
3. Patty was born in 59. Deb was born in 62, and then Bob in 63. And they all farm. Bob, although works at Moffat Products in Watertown, but when it's hard work or something, well, he can fix it and help. Like he took yesterday afternoon off, and then this morning off. Is Bob still here?
No. Yeah.
Went home. Mom was one of 3. I was one of 3. We had 3, and they each have 3. So.
Deb works at the FSA.
And what?
Deb
Deb is at the FSA, and Pat is at the Reporter and Farmer,
Okay.
and Bob at Moffat Products. Bob has 3 boys, so the Whitmyre name will hang around a while. And Deb has twins. They're freshmen.
15, yep.
They're 15. And then Jessica, who's 2 years older.
Yeah. She'll be 17.
And Patty has 3. Brianna, who's married, lives in Bloomington, in Illinois. Works at a zoo. She graduated from SDSU.
I'll be darned. At the zoo, huh?
Yeah, well, she wanted to be a veterinarian, but that was costing too much money. And she got married there, and so her husband works there as well. But she worked at Bramble Park in Watertown while she was going to Brookings, or part-time there.
Okay.
So, and then at the vet's office in Webster, even in high school. So she liked animals. And then Cody graduated from high school this past year, and he'll be going to Votech in Watertown. And then Aaron is a senior. That's Patty's 3 kids. And they've all pretty much been on honor rolls. Take after their mother. Let's see. And then Bob has 3 boys. The oldest is a freshman,
Yep.
and then 8th grade, and 4th grade.
Okay.
Kyle, Brandon, and Caleb.
And Kyle helps too.
Yeah, Kyle, he's getting older. He helps.
Okay.
Farm.
They're big on pocket gophers.
Oh.
In Rusk Township, they pay $1 a head, and they've gotten well over 100 pocket gophers. They're a fright on that CRP.
Yeah.
But there'll be a lot less CRP next year. I think a lot of it is being broken out because rent gets to be 60, 70, 80, 100. You hear some pretty wild figures. So the CRP can't keep up with that.
Yeah, yeah. We are kind of bouncing around a little bit. One of the milestones for people on the farm after World War II, for most people at least in this part of the world, was getting electricity. You remember what that was like?
Electricity came in the fall of 51. I came home from Brookings and turned on the light. That was pretty nice. Didn't have to carry a lantern up in Amo anymore. Mm-hmm. But that, I remember Dad, going with Dad in I suppose 1940 or so, and signed up $5 to join the REA, Lake Region Electric. Al O'Connell was the county agent, and they conducted the meeting in the Butler High School gym. Mm-hmm. And just about everybody signed up. You know, hoping electricity would soon come. Mm-hmm. But the war put the kibosh on that, and actually the place where we are here got it in 46, so it had electricity before. Yeah. But we didn't on the farm until the fall of 51. Mm-hmm. But that was pretty nice. You got lights in the hen house, so you could hopefully get more eggs, more production.
Yeah.
Heat lamps in the farrowing barn. Mm-hmm. Milking machine.
You could see, one guy commented to me on this was the first time he'd seen what was actually in the dark corners of the barn that he'd never really seen before.
Yeah, I would imagine. But you had nails about on every joist so you could hang the lantern. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing some people had a wire down there. Just slide the lantern to where they were milking.
Oh, okay.
I never had that. We had nails, but that wire looked to be kind of a handy thing. And those milkers, when we did have milkers, they were bucket milkers. You know, you carried the bucket for each cow, emptied it. Speaking of milk, remember we never heard of anything other than drinking raw milk. Didn't think of it as raw milk. We just drank milk. Mm-hmm. Give the cat a squirt.
Yeah. And did it on occasion have an odd flavor?
When we were first married, we had one cow, and that milk would taste different. Just depends on what you ate that day. Yeah. But I guess I don't remember the other milk. I suppose, with about 8, 9, 10 milk cows, why there was enough to...
But a mask if they ate something that flavored it.
Yeah. But when they had one cow, that milk always tasted different. That didn't last too long.
Yep.
Oh, and then we always had chickens. So I never ate a good egg until we got rid of the chickens, because we always ate the cracked ones. Or
you taking the eggs to town then? Or
yeah. Well, and then when we had this hen house here, then they come and picked them up. And of course, there are no chickens. There's no egg picker-uppers anymore. No. Almost no pigs in the county or milk cows. Very, very few herds of milk cows.
We talked some about cooperatives.
Maybe before you get into that, I was thinking out there, really our family, now they're talking about the immigrants in South Dakota. The family farm is being replaced by immigrant labor. You know, because you got these big dairy barns and it's immigrants. Hog barns probably. Well, the hogs are raised in Iowa or other states, but the family farm is being replaced by immigrant labor. Your turn.
Yeah, we talked about cooperatives. Your parents were cooperative supporters. Do you think that people of Scandinavian descent had a special attraction for cooperatives as a way of doing business?
I think so, because they that's where co-ops were started. remember, is it Rockford, England, or what am I trying to think of?
Mm-hmm.
Rockford, England was cooperative. Norway had cooperatives. Finland, Denmark. You go up into Brown County, German Russians, great co-op supporters. Get over into Edmonds County, real strong cooperatives.
My folks were German, and they were Farmers Union too.
Yeah, both sides of the family were farmers. Arlo, her brother used to be president of York. Isn't it York?
Troy.
Troy Township, Troy local.
Okay.
So everybody belonged to Farmers Union. But the cooperatives came from Europe, and the people with closest with ties to the old country kept their co-ops going.
Yep.
And I think our furnace that they just finished installing came from Whetstone Valley Electric Co-op. We still use Cenex products from Four Seasons Co-op or Four Seasons, and Petroleum Partners is the fuel, and Four Seasons is fertilizer chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
The Webster Watertown Co-op elevator is where our grain goes. Feed comes from there. Some from wheat growers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the ITC telephone co-op board for 5 years. So our phone service too is cooperative. Although, I don't know if this is where you want it. Co-ops don't seem to have the connection with family agriculture that they once did.
Well,
Probably you wouldn't put that in there, but
we will get to some of those kind of questions later on. But what kind of you started farming in 1950?
Well, 54 then,
54.
I suppose. Yeah, I rented this place.
Yeah. What were the challenges for you back in those days? That's an era when Ezra Taft Benson was Secretary of Agriculture, and things that were not quite as good as they had been during the 1940s.
The farmer before this was not big on picking rock.
Oh, okay. That was rocks were a challenge.
Yeah, I remember you'd load them on a flatbed and haul them to the end of the field where the rock pile was.
Is rocky soil around here?
Parts of it, yeah. It's rolling land.
Mm-hmm.
My dad said that the reason we were here is because Elling thought it looked like Norway, and we had some people from Norway about 4 or 5 years ago stayed here. He says, "It kind of reminds us of home," So Dad was right.
Mm-hmm. Not in the fjords, though.
No, not in the fjord, but rolling.
Yeah.
Rolling land. The Germans went west of Butler where it was flat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But here, Norwegians like the rolling land. Kind of interesting. It seemed like they put the building site, like here, kind of on a knoll where things wouldn't grow good. We'll put the house and barn there so you can see if the Indians are... No, don't put the Indians there. But it seemed like a lot of times the yard was where... or next to a slough or something for water.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't put in places where trees would grow good,
Mm-hmm.
or gardens or whatever.
Yeah. You mentioned land prices, machinery, land prices, everything was quite a bit cheaper than it is today.
I think Dad paid, I don't remember what he paid for the H, but a DC case in 50 was around 2,200, 2,100, and then 88 olds that they bought was about that same price.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what cattle and that was then. But self-propelled combine was around $5,000-6,000.
Mm-hmm.
And fuel, I suppose, 40 cents a gallon, 50 cents.
Yep.
Diesel was always less.
Quite different than today.
Yeah.
Your kids are all farming, so you kind of know about the challenges that they're facing,
Yeah.
as opposed to what
I
you
think
had.
the interest rate, when Jimmy Carter was president, they and fuel started going up, they raised the interest rate, and that was really devastating for here too. We paid 8% when we built the house, and it soon went to 18. And it seems they had a different philosophy then under Jimmy Carter. Then you're going to stop it, and they whooped it up. And we had gas now, but the Federal Reserve kept lowering it. It just seemed like the Federal Reserve was out to get Jimmy Carter. And it worked. I don't know if that's what did it, but it didn't help. That and then the hostage thing.
Yeah.
But when fuel went up, then the interest rate went up. And a lot of money, the profit, we had to go and pay the interest, added interest costs.
There was we talked about Farmers Union activity here in Day County. When did you first get elected to a Farmers Union office?
Walter Reitz, Nyla and John Amundsen, you know that. Her dad and George Brady came over, and I think we joined Farmers Union in the fall of '58 then, while we were married. And I suppose in a couple of years, about 1960, I suppose I was president of Rusk Local, because that was the local we belonged to. Then a few years after that, then Day County Farmers Union president. I think I was Day County Farmers Union president when Ben hired me. I see, that would have been the fall of '67.
Okay.
So
and
I went from.
we come up to my question about how was it you came to work for Farmers Union?
I think I was at a district meeting and I complained about property taxes, or a tax thing. I think it must have caught Ben, and that kind of caught Ben's attention, I guess. He figured I was on the right side of the property tax thing, and here I am 40 years later still complaining about property taxes and sales tax. But anyway, Ben called, we were cutting silage in the fall of '67. And the following Sunday, then I went to Huron. He interviewed me, and I remember at home I asked Francis Coyne over west here, a good friend. He'd been a school teacher, what I should do, and he thought it would be best if I did that. I could live at home and do it. I'm a field man for this area.
Yeah.
I lived in District 3 with 7, so wasn't quite the central, but pretty close.
So you were kind of looking out for 2 districts then?
Yeah, 3 and 7. I replaced Darrell Walker because I think he was on Leroy Wheeler's side on an election or something.
Okay.
And he lost his job. And District 3 and
What
7.
all did the job entail in like 1967, 68, 69?
Well, membership, co-op meetings, camp. We always went to district camps, state camps. They had 2 state camps then, and all 3 of us field staff were there.
Who were the other field staff members?
Leroy Hardy, who is still here, and Hans Wagner. I get Leroy Hardy and Ben Radcliffe and Leroy Wheeler are 3 of those that were active then and are still with us today. I suppose there's a few others that I'm not thinking of right now.
Yeah.
But Brown County had some real tax promoters there. Al Bougian, Harold Shoneman, and Harold and I still visit quite regular.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that our tax system that I was concerned about 40 years ago is still we are paying for that up here.
Mm-hmm.
Because we pay a broad sales tax, high property tax, we educate people, and so we end up with lower income or even medium income paying 10% of their income in state taxes. Those on the upper end gets down to about 2%. And we seem to be satisfied. The state seems satisfied with that. I think I worked for Farmers Union in the heyday. I don't know if it was the top heyday, but there were good times. We did get quite a few accomplishments. We eliminated the personal property tax. That was Farmers Union led.
Mm-hmm.
Later was getting this farm parts, pieces and all that, so they didn't have to pay city sales tax. Single-member Senate district. And those happened when Ben Radcliffe was president and some of it Lee Swenson,
Mm-hmm.
who we had most of our tax gains under those two administrations. They've always been monkeying with how to assess property, and they still do that today. It's wrong because they're trying to get the last penny out of property.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what hurt South Dakota.
Yeah. Did you end up spending a lot of time on the road?
Yes.
A lot of night meetings and
A
so
lot
on?
of night meetings. I think I drove around 40,000 miles a year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Was that difficult to keep farming at the same time you were doing all of that?
We had the Ray Sass family. We had about 5 or 6 of their kids working here. Started with Jim Sass, Ellen, Ron, Russ, and who helped tear the barn down? The tall one.
Dwayne? No.
No, not Dwayne. She knows who I am.
And don't forget your dad.
And Dad. But I usually had and that worked up until when I had to, I stayed in that school bus there, and then the hired help was getting as much money as I was, and that was tough. The Farmers Union, I think, cut the salary some, and it got down to where I was losing ground.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not really aware of it like I should have been, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
Farmers Union was good enough to let me live in that school bus there, and then I stayed with Lee Swenson 1 year.
Oh, okay.
In their basement.
There were a lot of local cooperatives you had in the late '60s and into the '70s. Did you try to make all the annual meetings in your district?
I made it. Yeah, I made quite a few of them, and I got
if they
sort
were
of
the same night or something.
Yeah, had kind of a humorous bone, and so I kind of known for telling jokes. They were always good, clean jokes.
So how did you go about collecting jokes? I know you used to. You have a book
I think
or something?
I had a couple books or a subscription for a while to a joke thing.
Mm-hmm.
He had them all in his head.
And then I'd make notes on them on the back of my date book. And sometimes, just whatever happened there got to be kind of funny. And it just seemed to work out. And I had the feeling that they didn't mind having me speak.
Did you have to write down a whole joke, or did you just write down a couple of words?
I just wrote down a couple of words of the punchline or something, and but now they've all disappeared. Oh, Jerry Sass was the one, the other one. So we had Jim. Now I'm jumping back. Jim, Jerry, Ron, Alan, Russ, Yeah, 5 sasses
Yeah.
for
Did you ever like tell the same joke to the same people twice? Did you have to worry about that?
I think
Some people did that. I know.
yeah. No, I pretty much tried to keep them fresh because
Yeah.
if their meeting was in January, well then I'd have a whole new batch for the next January.
Where'd you pick them up at? You said you subscribed to something. Did you?
And then listening, sometimes somebody would tell a joke, and maybe I'd improvise it once in a while to make it local.
Yeah.
I don't know. A year ago, I was looking at some of my old date books, and there's some punchlines written down there. And,
The worst one was carpeting the bathroom.
Carpeting.
We had one.
yeah, hell, I used that for a year. We carpeted the bathroom, and we liked it so much, we carpeted it all the way to the house.
Okay.
Some of those old ones, they go around again. Not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
You probably had heard it at one time, but
I
you'd
don't know that
forgotten
I had
it.
heard that one.
Oh,
You may
okay.
have. You were really updating because I don't think I'd heard that particular one.
Okay. Oh. But I don't remember jokes now like I used to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't have quite the imperative of having to have a joke for a meeting tonight.
No, I don't have to look. I don't look for them. But I still do. We got to get our bus driving in there someplace, somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
We'll get
the jokes is kind of my mainstay, and a co-op pitch along with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd, pick up. Fortunate with being with Farmers Union, got to go to the regional annual meetings and picked up information and got to pass that along.
How did you relate to the co-ops during the rest of the year? They'd have their annual meeting. You'd go to that. Did you kind of try to stop in occasionally?
Yeah. At Christmas time, I'd buy a box of chocolate-covered cherries, and that was kind of a staple. And and insurance agents, too, got that same box. If it was a big co-op, they got a 16-ounce. Otherwise, it was a 12-ounce box. Depends on how much educational funds we got. Oh, that was a job, too, we had to do, was collect educational funds. Sometimes they'd send it in on their own, but usually you ask for it.
Yeah. Did you work with them on the checkoffs and all? Did some of them have checkoffs up here?
Yeah,
You want to explain how the checkoff works in case there's somebody who listens to this that doesn't know?
The checkoff system was established by Farmers Union many years ago, it came out of the patronage, out of the earnings. If a patron earned $100, then his dues came out of that first. And some co-ops had it was the way it was. If a patron had made enough money, had earnings enough to pay the membership dues, it was taken. Some co-ops it had to be although it was all voluntary. If they didn't want to be a member, they could just tell the manager or whoever, and it would not be taken off. But some had to be as a card signing check off, and you had to sign a card to have it checked off. And most people did that because the Farmers Union was a good fit with cooperatives. I think there was no other organization did as much promoting of Senex and Harvest Dates as Farmers Union.
Did most of the co-ops up here in District 3 and 7, did they have checkoffs, or at least those that were affiliated?
Most, not all. Britain and Dual County were our biggest checkoffs. And out in Edmonds County, they didn't have as big a co-op, but they had numerous ones, Bowdle, Roscoe, and Hosmer. And it was a good, strong Farmers Union county.
Yep.
Brown County, Frederick, Barnard, Claremont, they all had checkoffs. I think pretty much up here in District 3 and 7. Sisseton had the checkoff, I think was card signing. But Dual County and Britain were the biggest ones. And it made District 3, I think it was usually about the second largest membership in the state. Kind of a battle between 1, 2, and 3. But District 7 then was up there because of the checkoff. And insurance agents then did a good job on collecting dues.
One of your other jobs for field staff was membership work, and of course there was the cash membership thing. And
we worked with the county presidents a lot on that, or somebody in the county. After a few years, you pretty much knew who would help, and people would ride along, or sometimes we went out on our own. I think getting membership was one of the least attractive thing, but it was something that was required. Sometimes it was fun. I think one was surprising. Did membership. I think it was West River. We were helping each other. I was with one guy, and he said, "We'll just go over here to my neighbor." The neighbor lived almost 10 miles away. You know, when I think of neighbors, you know, down the road a mile or two, but there we drove 10 miles just to find his neighbor.
How did you go about approaching somebody who wasn't a member? Did you just stop in and...
He just stopped in and told... Maybe there was some legislation. It was my favorite thing. Because we were able to get some accomplishments then. But we had a... so we could talk about property tax, sales tax, or some of the things that we had doing, and benefits. And if they had kids, I'd emphasize our youth program. And that was a very good selling point. And of course, it's sort of like looking out for Farmers Union way down the road, hoping some of those kids did become active.
Sure.
How about lifetime memberships too?
In lifetime membership, did we pay $100?
I think so.
I think it was $100. They took $25 a month out of my salary. I still have the metal card. Tony Deschamps' name is on it.
You signed up Bob too.
And our son is a life member. And we signed up others. I think quite a few of the employees then got to be life members. And and it wasn't required. You did it because you wanted to.
Yeah, it was a little bit out of every check for a while. Camps. You said you went to
District 3 and District 7.
Yeah. Did you go to state camp?
Yeah, all three of us went there.
Okay.
And I never was much of a coffee drinker, but I'd get out there and Leroy and Hans would drink coffee, and I couldn't sleep at night. I didn't even think of it. It took years afterwards. Hey, it's that stupid coffee. But we'd sit back there at night while the kids did their dancing or whatever, and we sat back on the sofa and drank coffee, and then I couldn't sleep. It was a stupid coffee. Never heard of decaf or anything.
Okay, when did you develop the Maynard character?
Dave Wentzloff. It was Dave Wentzloff and I.
Early 70s?
I suppose, yeah. Maynard the Magnificent. But Dave Wentzloff, he'd do the Ed McMahon part.
So it was based on the Johnny Carson.
Based on Johnny Carson, yeah. He was it, only you know the answer. And
you developed the routines. Did you do that every night out there, or just
no, a couple nights, because you always based it on some incidents that happened at camp. That was kind of a regular chore. Dave Wentzloff, and then Bergen, Ken Bergen. And I guess they were my main one. Dave Wentzloff was the first one, so you remember that the best. But Ken was a good Ed McMahon also. Even did that out at National too, out at Bailey.
Oh, did you?
A couple times.
Okay.
And I don't remember who was, because I suppose I had to break in a new Ed McMahon. But you'd always come up with something that happened at camp. As a rule, not always, but but we did the whole bit. Dolores made that fancy hat for me to wear.
Oh, okay.
Or was it the cape?
Well, the
It
cave
is the
too,
cave.
but Cliff Ott, didn't they?
The cap was that other.
Yeah, but I wonder if Cliff Ott or Mrs. Ott made a cap. I didn't know I had a hat a couple of years. Somebody had made a hat, but Dolores made the cloak.
You had kind
have
of
it.
like a giant beret or something.
Yeah. It was a, but it was a hat. I still had the cloak.
Oh, okay. I'll have to dig around and maybe later on I'll scan some stuff at the office. I think we got pictures of you doing the routine. There's probably one in the book, I think. I think there's one in the book. Another thing that happened routinely was fairs and winter shows and all that kind of thing. Do you do a lot of those?
Yeah, we even went down to the fair in Huron.
Mm-hmm.
Fair in Sioux Falls.
Or Sioux Falls, not Huron.
Well, you did
Sioux
Huron,
Huron.
too.
We did Huron every year.
Did you ever get out to Central States, or did they not send you way out
No,
there?
never
I think
did
Leroy
go out there.
did that.
Leroy did that.
Yeah.
But down to Sioux Falls a couple of years. I remember the state fair, first time we did it, Dolores and the kids, we were all along, stayed at that Riverside Motel.
Mm-hmm.
And, we didn't have running water in the house or a bathtub, and that was the highlight for them. Yeah, they played in the bathtub there. Well, that would have been See, this house we got in 73, and so that would have been 67, 68, I imagine, was the first year. And, but we, had running water in the kitchen, but no bath, no stool. We carpeted the bath, toilet all the way to the house.
Okay.
So that was quite a treat for the kids.
One time we saw Art Linkletter. Bob spotted him in the hallway, and then he said, Art Linkletter's out here. He didn't see him, but I think
I suppose he was an entertainer at the state fair.
A lot of attendance back in those days.
Yes. Before Larry Gabriel screwed it up. He did.
Yeah.
We don't say that out loud.
Okay.
But that was a treat. But we did that 7 days, 8 days. Set the, we stayed there. But the kids really, well, everybody got off the farm, and somebody had to stay here and do chores because we always have cattle.
Yep.
And the state fair, a lot of people went by. Anyway, that and then the convention, getting ready for the convention.
Oh yeah,
that was,
conventions. Yes.
That was a big. We always had it at the Huron Arena. We had to build a stage. It took a day to get everything put together. Everybody carried cement blocks and tables. We made a big platform on it. And
when
I guess
did they start doing that kind of thing? They were doing it when I started.
They were there when I started. Yeah,
Okay.
we carried those tables. There were high tables for the main stage. And I guess the one I remember the most when Walter Mondale was going to speak. And
when he was vice president.
Yeah, he was vice president, and all the security, and man, they were there watching us build the stage and be sure that nobody could hide under there. That was the day before we never heard the word insurgent. But that was one of the highlight conventions, getting ready for him. But we had a big backdrop, 2 4x8 sheet plywoods. You had to bolt them together. Lift, okay, everybody lift, we pull on that rope.
Yeah, that big wooden sign that used to hang from the...
I suppose it's still in the old garage.
Yeah, I believe so.
But it was 2 4x8 plywood sheets. We bolted them together, and a couple eyelets on them, and a rope on each end. Some lifted and others pulled down. Up it came. But that was a grand stage. When the convention came, you knew it was convention time and then of course you had to tear all that down. That was the next day's project.
Yes. We talked a little bit about your photography, but that kind of extended into Farmers Union too a little bit.
Yeah,
You did a lot of photography for Farmers Union.
A lot of the pictures from co-op meetings and county meetings,
Convention.
camp,
Mm-hmm.
even, took Barb Letter's wedding pictures, so we had Carrie Krause and Reed Nolte.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, this gets, even now I go someplace, if I see, yesterday was a Macomb out there at Fernie, He was a kid at camp, and Beck from up at Britain, and he was pitching, and I hit, and it schmucked him, and he knocked him out. He had a black eye. And the last time I batted at any Farmers Union camp, it was softball. It wasn't baseball.
Yeah.
I don't know if it really knocked him down anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And talked to him about a month ago, and we still talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big guy now.
Not a lot of reaction time for a line drive to the pitcher.
No. But that was the last time that I batted at a Farmers Union camp.
Okay.
And then out at state camp, Othir fell off the top bunk and broke his shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
Took him into the hospital in Rapid City. Another event, Rapid Creek, slowed it down to a trickle, and the little 3-year-old boy, they couldn't find him, and he drowned in the creek, but they shut the water from Pactola, shut it down to find him. And then the other time was the flood. I came through, we all got typhoid shots, all except Dorothy Geidel. She wasn't going to take any shot. But a few of the kids got sick from it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was following the Rapid City flood.
Were you out there that week? Or?
Yeah. It rained on Friday, and I'd gone through there because I was on the resolutions committee for Lake Region Electric Co-op.
Mm-hmm.
So I left that early, got gas at one of the stations that washed away.
Mm-hmm.
And then camp was delayed one day for the second camp. So instead of Sunday, we went out on Monday, then we went around the back way. The buses parked just off of that highway there because you couldn't cross that creek. The bridge had washed out. And then the camp pickup then hauled the kids up to the camp and the luggage and all that, made numerous trips. But a helicopter landed and we all got typhoid shots.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now this is at Camp Placerville.
This is at Placerville.
UCC camp out there. Yeah.
Then on Saturday, then when usually ended on Fridays, so it was delayed one day. So on Saturday, then we were able to drive through Rapid and see all the damage that was done. That park was that dam, Lake Calhoun. What does the lake?
Canyon Lake.
Canyon. Well, I started right. See, Canyon Lake was flooded out, and our neighbor was in the National Guard camp out there, and he drowned. So he lost a neighbor, Myron Corbin.
Mm-hmm.
So it got home to Dee County then that way. But
actually, he was my sister-in-law's brother.
Yeah. I'd picked corn for him several years. Had a 2-row mounted on a H and then a 350 International.
Mm-hmm.
2-row snapper.
Yeah.
$3 an acre.
Mm-hmm.
And good corn was 40 bushel an acre.
During the 1980s, you served as education director for, was it a year
2
or
years? 2 years, yeah.
And it was kind of like you were still doing field rep stuff too?
Joe Bus.
Yeah, did all kinds of stuff.
Kind of like farming, a jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody pretty much was that. When we put up the convention, the whole staff went and pitched in, taking it down, and Lee and I suppose other presidents, they always had the Bible that we had to follow, and all the rules. It was about a 15-page document that be sure you had a pitcher of water on the podium, and sound system turned on, and chairs. And
what later on was known as the mud sheet.
a mud sheet, okay. And then probably same thing today. All right, will those at the back of the room be quiet?
I even tape recorded some of the speakers.
Yes, that's right. We used to do that up in the little booth way up on top there.
Yeah, and I think I got to be down. I don't remember being up high. I think that's only.
It's where the radio booth was at during the for basketball games
yeah.
and so on. Yeah, there was a little
It must have been
little walkway up there from the bleachers up on top. You know, because I remember setting it up there.
Okay.
Kind of give you all the instructions on what to tape and what not to.
Yeah. Speakers.
All of those recordings ended up getting donated to South Dakota State University, to the archives over there, so they didn't get lost. They're over there now.
I guess when you talk about Dick Rickey was the editor when I started, and then Alan Burke, and I still keep in touch with Alan. We email once in a while.
He's up in North Dakota now.
Lytton, North Dakota. He has 2 newspapers, that one and then one other one. Apparently does fairly well anyway.
Seems to like it.
Yeah. We get his paper. I guess they've all been my friends.
Yeah. Was the education work easy for you, or some of the education directors have been teachers and some weren't?
Yeah, I think it was because of them. They helped put the books together and so on.
Sure.
It wasn't my natural ability or whatever, but it was good. Got a little complicated when I drive the bus out there for camp.
Yeah.
But it had involved more paperwork, which I was not a big fan of.
Yeah, and planning for camp. You had some help with that for those years?
The district educated directors did that because they pretty much, after we decided what was in the books, they pretty much set up their own camps. And that has changed, of course, over the years. One year we went up to Hart Butte.
Okay.
Drove the bus out there. We had over 70 kids in our bus.
Yeah. That's pretty crowded for a bus.
Yeah.
You must have had them sitting on top of it.
Yeah, we were full. Well, a couple cars went up. But she had a big camp. Was it just District 4 then? No. Grace Bubbers.
I think so. It was. She was the only one there, I think.
Yeah. I don't know,
Unless she
Viola
had
Berry, did she have? Maybe, but that was up at that was fun. We went out on a boat ride,
Yeah.
and then the wind came up, so we had to head for
give it
shore.
Okay.
I think that was one of the things I enjoyed with South Dakota Farmers Union, is the affiliation of Minnesota and North Dakota Farmers Union. Worked together on some activities.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned driving the bus up there. When did you start driving bus? Remember what year that was?
I think we tried to figure it out, and I drove.
When did you go to last?
Well, there was a farm thing in Des Moines, Iowa. Oh,
The kids up there.
Okay.
Is there a year on that?
Well, Bob was 9.
How long ago would that have been?
Must have been 72.
So that would have been about when I started, 70, 71. I drove as a school bus for a district camp. They rented a school bus from Foreman Bus at Miller, and I drove, because I had the bus, I had my old, so I drove that didn't even need a bus driver's license or anything, just drove the bus. And then Des Moines, Iowa was a farm rally.
Mm-hmm.
And because it had to be both down and back and too many hours for one driver. And so I drove the bus around the block a couple times, and I'm a bus driver.
Yep.
You know, I had practice driving the school bus.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bob Lundeen fell off the ladder in a granary and had a concussion, so he couldn't drive with people on the bus. And so we went up to Alaska. That would have been 73 or 4.
Mm-hmm. You got around the country quite a bit, didn't you?
Sure did, yeah. That was gone a month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
You used to talk about driving into New York City, too.
yes, that was after, that was the second trip then, because after we did the Alaska, then they had 2 buses, the New England tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the small bus, the MC5, and Elnora Swenson then was the tour guide on that bus.
Okay.
But going to Alaska, there are 2 things that you talk about take your breath away. One was Mount McKinley.
Mm-hmm.
It's so huge. And then the other was coming over the Hackensack River in New York's, you know, up at the top, and you look, and there was Manhattan Island right in front of you, and that was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, and here's 35 people back of me, and I got them there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of breathtaking.
The World Trade Center was there then, right?
Yeah. Well, later, not for Farmers Union, but I parked a bus next there, World Trade Center, the year before they went down. And I was in, you know, when they showed pictures of those firemen running around on that first floor, I was in there. I'd taken some pictures in there, and hard to imagine that thing. But, and I would imagine the guys that flew into it didn't think the building would come down either.
Might not have. Yeah.
They were just trying to make a point.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
But so parking the bus.
Grace Bubbers, district
Mm-hmm. Sure.
director. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that New York. Yeah, we had both buses then. So Bob Lundeen would have been in the first bus, or was it Roy Putzier then? I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Bob Lundeen, but anyway, he wouldn't watch out for us. If we couldn't see him, we were on our own. I mean, we caught on in a few days. So Elnora kind of kept track of where we were supposed to go. But Mary,
Convoying isn't particularly easy.
no, and in a bus it makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, you dash through a light just turning red. Well, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
On the Alaska trip, Bob would always refuel the bus. And in one place up there, I mean, I couldn't do anything right. And he backed into a tree because he was going to fuel the bus, and he backed it up and backed into a tree. He was a little easier to get along with after that. Because it took a crowbar to get the bumper away from the crankshaft.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but that was, it was a good training, you know, because, you know, Lundeens know how to handle people and deal with all of that. And, you know, so I was learning whether I wanted to or not. But it was a good course in working with a busload of people.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you worked at Farmers Union until 1980-something? 88 or 9?
Let's see, 67, must have been 89.
88.
Mm-hmm.
88?
It was our 30th anniversary when they had that get-together down there in Huron for you.
Oh, 88, okay. All right, that would have been 21 years, started
Okay.
in 67.
As you look back over all that time, what did you enjoy the most?
bus driving.
Did you?
I think the convention,
Mm-hmm.
going to regional conventions,
Mm-hmm.
going to peer. We had, I think, like I said, it was in the heydays of Farmers Union.
Yeah.
You had kind of two-party government, and both parties were kind of favorable to family agriculture, and so you could get support on both sides of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
We had like two-party government, and it really made progress. Dick Knipe was governor when we got our big tax things accomplished. And you had legislators that went along with it, and they were on both sides. Bob Weber was an excellent example of a friendly Republican, and he was a leader in Farmers Union as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there was people from some Sioux Falls that were friendly, both Republican and Democrat. We were always accused of being Democrat, and I guess, but we always set up our own program. We didn't follow one party's agenda. We did our thing, and the Democrat philosophy fit ours closer than the Republican Party. They were more what's good for big business, good for everybody. And Farmers Union felt what's good for farmer agriculture is good for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We had the corporate passage of the corporate farm bill was very gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
Morris Olson, Andy Weiss were sponsors of it, and Ben Radcliffe was president, and we got a corporate farm bill. And I think what's happened since then, of course, is that it's practically eliminated. I don't know what's left of it. It doesn't seem to be any evidence of it. That and freedom to farm was also a detriment to family agriculture. I don't know if detriment's the right word, but it hastened the demise of family farmers.
Mm-hmm. What did you enjoy least about doing?
Membership.
Membership, huh?
I guess that would be about it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You had a chance to work with 3 different state presidents. Do you want to talk about them? I think Ben
Well,
Radcliffe, certainly.
Minnesota, 3 different state
Here.
I think we had most of our accomplishments under Ben and Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Tonsager was kind of another generation from me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't relate all that well. I remember one big disappointment was we had conserving acres. And we were dry up here,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get permission to make hay on the conserving acres.
Yeah.
And Dallas said, well, not all of us have conserving acres, so he wasn't in favor of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember writing to Tom Daschle, and it wasn't just me, but there were others along with our ASC office, and we got done. We were able to make hay on it. But I thought, in a way, that was unfair because Dallas was in dairying, and had support from the government on dairy programs, but not all of us milk cows.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, just like with the conserving acres, not all of us had conserving acres. But anyway, that was just one example.
Okay. Were there other Farmers Union members or leaders around that impressed you over the years?
Leroy Wheelock,
Mm-hmm.
Harold Shoneman, Al Bougian, Al Waltman. I guess this gets to be a little more recent. Harvey Woolman was exceptionally supportive of Farmers Union.
Mm-hmm.
And he was governor, and probably rank him up near the top. The name just didn't get me at the right time, but he would have been, and still is, a good friend.
Yeah.
And all of these are that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
George Levine from West River was a one you could learn a lot from.
Mm-hmm.
Leif Lunder, I remember at a supper they had for him. I said the reason I liked Leif Lunder was he was Lutheran Democrat Farmers Union.
And Scandinavian.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, Norwegian Lutheran Democrat Farmers Union.
Yeah.
They had all four in there.
Yeah. After you left the South Dakota staff, you worked in Minnesota for a while. Was it different over there?
I worked for a photographer at first.
Yeah.
And then with Minnesota Farmers Union. Willis Eakin was the president then.
Mm-hmm.
And
he had run against Lee for national president.
Yeah, at one time.
Yeah, in '88.
Oh, after Lee was in?
Yeah.
Okay. Willis eventually became on the field staff for Colin Peterson.
Oh, okay. He was a state legislator, I think, before he was.
Yeah, Willis was. And they're pretty much done the same way here as mostly membership. We really didn't have the youth program that we do here. I wasn't involved in the youth at all. But with Cooperative, got a check-off at the St. Paul Co-op, card signing check-off. We got that done at an annual meeting. It's about one of the few that I did get implemented. But I thought it felt pretty good about that. I don't know what their membership is today.
Yeah, I don't know either. You drove bus for a while then.
Then
when did you kind of get back out to the farm here?
I drove bus for Medicine Lake Lines, and that was a special ed.
Yeah.
And then got into transit driving, so I had both handicapped children in the daytime, and then at night, the evening, then adults going down Marquette Avenue, took them out to New Hope and Crystal, and so that was I went from $1,400 a year to $2,000 to $2,500 before too long.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what hurt most, was the income was not enough.
Yeah.
But got to quite a bit of bus driving, and then a group from Japan wanted a coach, and so then Medicine Lake worked with Richfield Bus Company. Went over there on Sunday afternoon, and this older guy was cleaning up a bus that I was to take, and I asked if I could squeegee the windows. Yeah, Well, then when I got done, he figured if I was willing to do that, must not be too bad a guy. So I drove for them once in a while, and still use their bus for going up to Hostfest. Just kind of out of a tradition or something. But it's a family-owned business, but they have many buses.
Yeah, okay.
That's when I got to drive to Yankees, parked in the bus lot of a Yankee Stadium, which was kind of a thrill, being where Babe Ruth and Roger Maris and all those guys, Mickey Mantle. That was kind of awesome.
Were you did you have a favorite baseball team, or?
I suppose usually been the Twins.
Yeah, okay.
Well, when I was in grade school, it was the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Green Bay Packers. I still kind of like to see them win. But it would have been the Brooklyn Dodgers, and that, of course, was a pretty fierce battle between them and the Yankees many times at the World Series. Bob Feller, Whitey Ford. Yeah. And then your North Dakota pitcher who had that no-hitter. He came from what? Who had that no-hitter in the World Series for the Yankees?
Don Larson.
Don Larson. Wasn't he from Fargo?
I don't think so. No.
Wasn't it Don Larson?
Where he was from, but
because they're in the mall up at Fargo, they have a whole window display. Wasn't it Don Larson?
Well, the display in the mall is the Maris display. I don't know about
Roger Maris.
Yeah, Roger Maris.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, he was from Fargo.
Maybe that's the one then. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you were.
Oh, and then with Farmers Union, I drove for many ball games, football, and baseball
Yeah, you could
games
have
for the
started
co-ops.
Grove again later on.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. How long did you do that until the? Did you do that right up until we quit the bus program?
No, I think I was gone before they quit.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I was gone. Then when Dennis came in, then he bought those 2 buses that never should have happened.
Yeah.
One would have been all right, but I mean, you don't go from a $60,000 bus to a $300,000, and then they lease it, didn't even own it.
Then you were elected Farmers Union vice president. When did you run for that? Now.
Well, let's see, yeah, when I was home. Let's see, when did I get to be 65? About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Dallas Tonsager resigned to get that federal job, and then it was a 6-month or.
I think it was a value-added thing.
Oh, he value added. He
After
stayed
had
in
left
here
the
on,
federal
yeah.
job. Yeah.
I don't know if that's when you first started. I suppose.
June 6th of 03.
That's when this was taken.
Okay. Somewhere
Okay,
around
so it would have been the 02 or 03.
along in there.
Then I ran for that short-term spot, and then was reelected.
Okay.
The short-term spot I ran against Wayne Soren, then Jim
Wall.
then the second time, then the last time was Larry Bergen.
Yeah.
And that, the Ridgefield thing was one of the things that did me in, because I was not in favor of Ridgefield. Never a firm supporter, believer in it, because I always felt, where are you going to get 600 fat Herefords a day? And they kept telling me, they're out there. All the driving I did, But anyway, that was why I was skeptical of it, and I did vote for it, and voted reluctantly to stay in because Paul Simmons thought we should. And but then I was opposed to more money. They wanted another 200,000, and I was opposed to it, and so they decided to get rid of that vote. That was one of the issues.
Yeah. Was there? You had been a staff member for a lot of years. Did that give you a different perspective than when you were on the board later on than you had when you were working as an employee?
I think we were handicapped by not having field staff. We weren't able to touch the counties. We weren't able to touch the co-ops. We lost a lot of that closeness, I feel, with Senex and Harvest Dates, and it's. We started losing co-ops. They merged. We lost the checkoffs, and we didn't have people go. I don't imagine it.
Yeah.
People going to co-op meetings. I went to some as vice president, but I think the loss of the field staff has hurt about as much as anything. That's just my own thinking.
Okay.
Because you weren't touching the county presidents and drinking their coffee at their house.
Okay. You've been involved in some other stuff besides Farmers Union over the years. The Democratic Party, you've talked a little bit about that.
Democrat Party, I've been president the second time around on Day County president.
Did you ever run for the legislature?
I ran for Senate twice.
Okay.
Mary McClure the first time, and maybe it was both times. No, Henry Poppin the first time, and then Mary McClure the second time.
Okay, that would be back a ways.
That's back a ways. I'm surprised the name was still up there.
Okay.
I carried Day County, my own county, both times.
Okay.
But it was in Clark and Kingsbury.
Yeah, this has always been a pretty Democratic area around here.
Here, yeah. Yeah, we have
some of those
all
places.
3. Yeah. Day Marshall and Roberts County has always been good Democrat background.
And you are also in the Sons of Norway.
Sons of Norway.
You made a trip to Norway, didn't you?
Our son and I went to Norway but before this summer,
4 years ago it was.
this
yeah.
summer, went on the farm where Grandpa Whitmyre grew up.
Mhm.
Whitmere, white
Marsh.
white marsh, and that was it down in the bottom, and you could see. And no wonder he left the farm. There wasn't much there to make a living on.
Oh.
Kind of, in a way, years ago, the farm went to the oldest son.
Mhm.
Well, that would have gone to Grandpa Whitmyre, and then Dad, and then me, and then Robert. So if they hadn't changed the law, Bob would have owned the farm in Norway, north of Oslo, about 50 miles.
Okay.
But that was a fun, beautiful trip.
Yeah.
Everybody should go and see their roots.
And then you're on the CAP program too.
Oh, and CAP, Northeast South Dakota Community Action Program, I was on that board, and then president of that for several years.
You had that quilting place here in Webster. For
and
a while.
I involved in hiring the people that came out of.
Mhm.
So
Whatever became of that? Is that still there?
it happened a little like it was a little, we call it the little Enron.
Yeah.
The management took all the money and went overboard and went into making. I mean, the quilts, Native American style quilts, was what got it going.
Mhm.
And they had 500-600 people working at one time in the Northeast South Dakota.
Yeah.
And Lil Enron, and they kept just putting out baloney,
Mhm.
how good they're doing. Like Dennis Weiss. We don't put that down.
Okay.
But George White and others got big-headed, and they got six-figure salaries, and it just went down the tubes.
Yeah.
They went broke. The employees had stock in it. Part of their wages went into stock, and they lost it all. Many thousands of dollars.
It seemed to me like I remember you served on the Webster School Board, too.
I was on the Webster School Board one term, served as president 1 year.
Mhm.
Rehired the superintendent, which made some mad, and then fired the wrestling coach, which made more mad.
Mhm.
I had more votes in losing than I did in winning. But that was a good experience, in budgeting and so on.
Mhm.
And we did it. We made a few decisions which are still carrying true today.
Yeah. And you also had an appointed job, didn't you?
I was the lay member on the barber board.
Okay.
And
Do you get
under
free
Dick
haircuts
Knight.
out of that?
I got free haircuts out of that. You bet. That was pretty nice. That was when I quit by using wild root.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when they were done, they didn't put any oil on or anything, and never used hair oil after that.
Mhm.
But that was under Dick Knipe, and
Mhm.
got to be president of the Board of Barber Examiners for a term. So I got to be president of, but we go around checking barber shops to be sure they didn't have any lice, and everything was sanitary, and their tools were kept in the sanitary bucket and all that.
Okay.
And at a time when they were complaining about women barbers, they were coming on then. And,
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They even had, the women, did women's hair, and then they did men's haircut. Well, they had a rule for a few years that they had to be separated by a door. You couldn't have a man in that chair or a woman and then a man. It had to be in a separate. But that didn't last too long.
No.
But the barber thing was everybody wanted to be in Sioux Falls, so the rural areas had trouble getting barbers. Women, they graduate women barbers, and then they get married and go off, and so that would be the end of their barbering career. So it was a good turnout. Chuck Huber was the guy who operated. And I talked to him when I was in Sioux Falls in the hospital. I gave him a call.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's still in Sioux Falls, and kind of involved a little bit in barbering, but he's not a kid anymore either.
No.
So interesting you ask about that. But we went to Sioux Falls for a convention a few times. But the school was in Sioux Falls, and so we'd go down there and pass on those that took the barber exam.
Okay. Looking at cooperatives today in South Dakota, how would you evaluate the state of cooperation in South Dakota?
Co-ops are doing the job that we intended them to do. I think they kind of they operate more like a big business, but they provide the services that we need. Granted, they're not local, but we don't really have many co-op services available as far as in Bristol, tire repair, and batteries and wrenches and so on. You get all that.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have that affiliation because our office is in Britain, and so all we get are the chemicals and fertilizer
Mm-hmm.
and petroleum, but and there are services from them. So they serve. They're geared to serve the big operators.
Do you think younger farmers out here are as loyal to the co-op as maybe their grandfathers were?
I don't think so.
Or their fathers?
I think everybody today is dollar-minded. If the co-op is least cost and provides the service they need, they'll go there. But
Mm-hmm.
you see co-op board members who ship their grain anywhere or buy their product wherever it's the cheapest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you don't have the Farmers Union promoting co-ops like we used to do. I don't feel we don't do anything for co-op month anymore, do we?
Oh, we had a co-op month banquet here.
So that's my fault if I think Farmers Union. But you don't have the touch with. Although I think we have two good board reps on here with Randy Connect and who's the one his name down south.
There's a new one from Alexandria, from Hanson County.
Well, the other one is not anymore.
No, Merlin retired.
Merlin, yeah.
Merlin retired. He went in the Co-op Hall of Fame this year. I met the guy at the banquet. He's from a Farmers Union family down there in Hanson County. Don't know how active he had been, but the name was familiar from Hanson County. I'm just not thinking of it right now.
I think that's why we lost a lot of the funding from Senex Harvest States, because we haven't had all the board members favorable to Farmers Union.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that 5% educational funds to us.
Yeah. Grants.
It's called grants now.
Yes. We're almost done. Would you describe yourself as an optimist or a pessimist?
I guess optimist, hoping we get out of this war.
Mm-hmm.
I think every farmer is kind of an optimist, or he wouldn't keep at it. You get kind of pessimistic over the loss of people. Not just farms, our cities, our churches. I'm active in the church,
Mm-hmm.
Lutheran Church. I'm president of Butler Lutheran, and then we have 3 churches, and I'm president of the 3 churches.
Okay. Still a good membership in the churches up here?
We kind of hold our own at Butler
Yeah.
and the others, but you don't increase, and expenses keep going up. And we just have a new kind of. Dolores and I were delegates at the ELCA convention, and I sat at a table. I didn't know him, and visited with him, and he was a retired minister, and told him we needed one at Butler, and so he's our interim pastor. And we just happened to meet him and struck up a conversation. So, kind of a coincidence that this.
Did you vote for the new bishop, or was
No,
that an election?
I voted for a guy from Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
But I think David Zelmer will do a good job.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The Farmers Union got me into bus driving, you know. certainly, and working in that area, and so we still do. We
Sure.
do a couple baseball game trips a year.
Mhm.
We're going to Chanhassen a week from Saturday to see
Okay.
La Miserables.
Okay.
Go up to Hostfest. The 8th year we've done that.
All right. I've got one last question, and it's the one that I never quite know what I'm going to get from this, but is there anything else you'd like to comment on that I didn't ask you about? Is there anything obvious?
Farmers Union has been a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the fun parts, I think I mentioned it earlier about seeing people I
Mm-hmm.
once knew. I had a ball game trip out of Britain, and people who used to go to camp, they're
Sure.
grown up and have their own kids.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the people that I met statewide, being on a first name basis with Tom Daschle, Tim Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie Herseth Sandlin.
Mm-hmm.
And Farmers Union is probably the reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Made me, I suppose, active in the political party because
Mhm.
Farmers Union is politics.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's what makes this country. And I suppose Dolores has done all the responsible things when I've been gone, and so wouldn't be where I am without her.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We've been visiting with Maynard Whitmyre. Thank you for participating in the Cooperative Legacy Project.
Thank you, Chuck. 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 Chuck.